What would you say if I told you the release of Halo Wars 1 was the exact moment that the Halo franchise had come full circle? What if I told you that between 1998 and February 2009, a complete picture of the Halo series was captured? We had the original, the sequel, the finale that capped off a trilogy, an atmospheric spin-off, and then the genre spin-off. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Halo should have ended with Halo Wars. I am glad the series continued to expand beyond the vision Bungie had ages ago. All I want to point out is just how complete this timeline of games really is. So it's about goddamn time I got to Halo Wars 1, don't you think? Actman, you've reviewed every Halo game except this one, and it's taken you years. Well, shut your pie hole, cause I'm about to check off the last Halo game. No matter how knowledgeable or nerdy I think I might be when it comes to the adventures of my favorite ass-kicking cyborg, the fact that Halo was dreamt up as a real-time strategy game, and there's footage of it, is something I always forget. Like, what? But how did this end up turning into this? That's a story for another time. But can you imagine what kind of place the world would be if they kept the original voice of Master Chief?
The drop zone is clear. I repeat, the drop zone is clear.
Ew!
Combat Evolved went through some real shit in development, which incidentally is a common trend within the Halo franchise. And nowhere is this more true than with Halo Wars. You could argue that Reach was when the series really came full circle, and well, it basically was. You couldn't ask for a more perfect way to send Bungie riding off into the sunset. Reach gave the fans a sense of closure that is rare to see in the games industry. But the reason I'm focusing so much on this real-time strategy concept is because Bungie had always been so resourceful when it came to implementing their scrapped ideas from one game into another, like Wildlife or the Flamethrower. And that's exactly what Halo Wars is, a scrapped idea brought back to life. Or at least, that's what it appeared to be on the outside. The original concept of Halo would finally get the chance it never did. But how has this anomaly of a game aged over the course of 10 years? Does the story really matter or add on to the big picture of the Halo universe? What impact did Halo Wars have on the series overall, if any? And more importantly, did Bungie find a way to make a console real-time strategy game viable? Well, let's talk about this man to freak. Select all units, and Mac Blast our way straight into this. It's not often in my reviews that I take an extraordinarily long time to dive deep into the development of a game and pre-production phases. But Halo Wars is one of those games where the development process was so completely fucked. It's a wonder that Bungie made a game out of this at all. Not because it was delayed for years and years, or that there is some super shady stuff going on behind the scenes. It's because the team working on it became the bitch of Murphy's Law. I can't stress the importance of understanding how Halo Wars was developed, because it puts everything into perspective and establishes the context of its existence. At this point in the video, there's probably a decent portion of viewers who heard me say something factually incorrect. Maybe the majority of all you sweet, especially sexy, ACT fans haven't noticed anything wrong and think this is a dead stop in the pacing of the video. And right now, all you can think is,
Get on with it! Yes, get on with it!
I mean, I'm glad I'm taking the time to
Get on with it!
Alright. But what I've conveniently forgotten to mention is that, well, Bungie didn't have shit to do with this game, and in fact, never approved its production. If you already knew that, give yourself a pat on the back. But isn't that just bizarre? We tend to associate everything up until Reach with Bungie. How could a game they didn't approve of be developed and released by a separate company, while Bungie was still under their tenure and contract with Microsoft? Sit down, my children. The grandpa man shall tell ye a tale.
Blue six, we're under attack!
Back in 2001, aka the glory days of my youth, an independent video game company known as Ensemble Studios was acquired by Moneysoft. Having just released one of the greatest games and expansions of all time, Ensemble was red hot. Naturally, Microsoft set them to work on exclusive games for the PC, and the studio would continue to work on the Age of Empires series and Age of Mythology. In 2004, still the glory days of my youth, exhausted from 10 years of creating the same genre of game, the executives at Ensemble greenlit 3 new games for development. An ambitious MMORPG called Titan that would capitalize on the popularity of Warcraft, a Diablo 2 clone called Nova, and the team dove into uncharted territory with a prototype console real-time strategy game known as Project Phoenix. And no matter how hard they tried, for some reason or another, the team would never finish a non-RTS game and had to cancel several projects. A year or so later, 2005, they brought Phoenix to the heads of Microsoft and said, "Hey, look at our baby, look at how pretty he is. Is this project viable? You want to give us some money?" And the Microsoft executive said, "Yeah, this is cool and all, but fuck off and make it a Halo game, would you? And if you don't, you're all getting laid off. Peace!" Needless to say, Ensemble was not happy. Not only did they have to redo every asset for Project Phoenix and make it fit within the Halo art style, setting, and look, they also had to meet with Bungie executives and employees in order to make sure they were faithful to the franchise. During those meetings, there was a lot of animosity. The vast majority of Bungie's leadership was upset with Halo Wars and how another studio could get to touch their IP. With the news of Microsoft commissioning another Halo game without Bungie's approval, they saw it as whoring out the franchise. And Ensemble was not allowed to use Master Chief at all.
While Master Chief is special, we decided to leave him in the first-person shooter. He's the character that everybody identifies with. You know, they are Master Chief when they play Halo.
Plus, they needed Bungie's approval for basically every element of the story and lore.
We were allowed to have more Spartans alive, and we were allowed to do some things that broaden the Halo world.
We just collaborated with them on what the universe could contain, what it should contain, and what it can contain.
At the same time, Bungie, unwilling to share the secrets of the direction Halo 3 would go in, left the story of Halo Wars out to dry. And that's why it has virtually no connection to the other games. Flash forward to 2007, my days as a hooligan in middle school. Ensemble reveals Halo Wars at E3, and it looked fantastic. There was excitement all around. But then the game released and all this was scrapped.
The bases are in fixed locations around the map to bring in that territorial control aspect that is in most strategy games.
And the developers were probably in the background feeling something along the lines of, under the hood, this was a demo that functioned shockingly similar to Halo 2's E3 presentation in 2003, in that they were both made exclusively for E3, and almost no trace of what was shown can be found in the final game.
No smoke and mirrors, pre-recorded bullshit.
My ass!
So the game is obviously delayed, it's taking a new direction, the E3 demo isn't actually viable, they aren't getting much help or love from Bungie, and all this happening while they're just trying to make a damn video game. Later on, Halo 3 is released, and Bungie, unhappy with their working conditions under Microsoft, pulls the plug, but is still under contract to make one more game. And finally, in September of 2008, everyone showed up to work at Ensemble Studios to find a bunch of Microsoft executives waiting for them. The company would close down after the completion of Halo Wars. Despite the shocking revelation that they would all be out of jobs in a few months, only 3 people left the team of 100 prior to Halo Wars' completion. And that, my children, is the abbreviated tragic tale of how Ensemble Studios developed Halo Wars 1. I felt like it was super important to understand how and why the game exists in the way it does. Most Halo fans probably felt the same way I did, and that there was always something a little bit off with Halo Wars. But had I not known the facts about it, I would have just assumed Bungie was involved a lot more than they were. It's not easy to replicate the old school Bungie magic. 343 have only recently started to recapture that. But against all odds, and against Bungie themselves, Ensemble stayed true and faithful to the design, aesthetic, and sounds of a Halo game. Ensemble went through the most excruciating process to develop this game. Nearly everything went wrong. They wanted to make something other than an RTS. Their other two projects were cancelled and Microsoft forced them to make this one. Project Phoenix had a unique IP and universe that the creators poured love into. They had to throw it all out and turn it into Halo. They wanted Bungie's blessing and help with this task they weren't entirely thrilled with themselves. They received disdain, tension, and apathy from Bungie. Ensemble hoped they could complete Halo Wars, survive, and move on to the next big thing. And then they were permanently shut down. With everything we know now, is it possible that Ensemble was calling for help? Now that we understand the details of this catastrophic development cycle, it begs the question, has the real meaning behind the opening cutscene been revealed? I'll let you decide.
Captain's report, February 4th, 2531. 5 years. 5 long years.
That's how long it took to develop Halo Wars.
At first it was going well. Then setback after setback. Loss after loss. Made what was going to be a quick and decisive win into 5 years of hell.
I've been a fan of this series since the beginning, and every single game, except one, had a reveal trailer that tickled my balls and made me giddy like a schoolgirl. Watching the Halo Wars trailer for the first time, I remember exactly how I felt. It was vivid. No, not like that. It was something like this. Damn, those elites are squadding up. They got ships and everything all flying around. Man, this is crazy. This isn't Halo 4, is it? Nah. Oh? Oh?
This is Spartan Group Omega. If they want war, we'll give them war.
Oh, shit! How's that for ballsy? A brand new Halo game set years before Master Chief, and they throw in some Spartans there? As a young, impressionable, and hardcore fan of the series, that's all I needed to see to hop on board. Halo Wars is the type of game that appealed to people who were already fans, but it probably wouldn't turn you into one if you weren't already. I remember when Halo 3 came out, I literally thought that was the end of Halo. I can't tell you how many times I've rewatched this opening just to whet my appetite. The visuals in this trailer stand up so well to this day, even in 720p. During the build-up to its release, what captivated me the most about Halo Wars was the different perspective. To see scorpions, banshees, elephants, marines, grunts, ghosts, and brutes. To see these huge battles and this universe brought to life from a top-down view, the thought of it was just incredible. And then Halo Wars was quietly released. You bought the game and arrived at the main menu. That sound. It's just pure magic. And so the Halo series has always made an impact. Wait a second. Do you guys hear something? Is that the damn Halo theme? In a game not made by Bungie? Looking back, it's kind of a ridiculous thing to be impressed about, honestly. Halo as a series has always made an impression with the first time you boot it up and arrive at the main menu. And Wars is no different. In the final game and the one behind-the-scenes video I managed to track down, it's pretty evident that Ensemble was hyper-focused on staying true to the feeling of Halo.
Always our biggest concern was making sure that we had the Halo vibe down.
Warthogs are perhaps the most iconic vehicle from the Halo games. Everyone knows what a Warthog sounds like, looks like, feels like, drives like. So getting that right in Halo Wars was really important.
Make a robust strategy game, which we know how to do, but we also have to make something that feels very much like it's in the fiction of what Halo fans would expect.
And no matter what you can say about this game, they succeeded at that. But how's the story? X-Men's report. Fuck it. Story begins with Old Man Cutter lamenting the battle on Harvest and the efforts of the UNSC to retake the planet. Harvest being the first human colony attacked by the Covenant and the first one to be glassed. So it's pretty important in the Halo timeline. And once again, we the audience are treated to some spectacular visuals courtesy of Blur Studios. Of course they got the combat evolved vehicle physics up in here. The attention to detail, I tell ya. Aside from the original E3 reveal of Combat Evolved, which doesn't really count to be honest, this is the first time we'd ever seen large-scale battles like this, in a full-on cutscene. You ever notice how frequently Halo trailers or cutscenes end right as the action is about to happen? Sometimes in a fade to white or black? Well, in a first-person shooter, that helps a lot in immersing the player and allowing them to experience the combat. But in a real-time strategy game, where huge armies are involved, it's helpful to show these giant battles, because it sets the stage for the story and gameplay. Now I'm playing the definitive edition, which probably looks a little bit better, but goddamn, I still got chills seeing all the iconic weapons and vehicles of the Halo universe in a cutscene like this. Some of the choreography is pretty questionable though. What is this, one of those Civil War firing lines? Why are these elites not even bothering to take cover? They're all holding needlers, but I ain't seen no pink mist either. So how'd this guy die? Come to think of it, who brought the Arbiter's mentally challenged cousin into battle? Or were they short on plasma rifles and just said, fucking run at them, I guess? Little nitpicks, but you know, stuff that stands out to me. So they basically nailed the intro to a fucking T. But right off the bat, I could tell something was very, very wrong. Anyways, our homeboy Forge is down on the surface of Harvest, leading the fight against the Covenant, and they found something in the ice, some kind of structure. Having only the faintest idea of what it could possibly be, Cutter remarks,
Damn it. That complicates our mission.
How do you know that? This could be their base of operations, and that would in fact make your mission easier, because you know where they all are. So after rounding up survivors, retaking Alpha Base, Forge scouts ahead and sees a relic that the Covenant wish to open. There's an elite guy in charge, and he's quite irritable for some reason.
The Hierarchs grow impatient. We can delay no longer.
There's apparently a kind of rush to open the relic for the Hierarchs, but it's never stated or shown what the hurry is.
The journey requires sacrifice. Set the charges. Return to us. Our patience is not infinite.
It will be done.
See, Halo Wars suffers from generic, predictable, and slightly nonsensical dialogue. I've talked about it before, how any scene in a story should be doing at least two things, whether it be progressing the plot, establishing a theme or tone. You know, there's a million things you can do. I mean, anytime you have characters on screen, we should be learning more about them. They should be characterized. Like, all we learned about the Arbiter from this scene, and most of his scenes, is that he's just an impatient asshole.
I care not for your little life. Open the relic. I will take what we have. Arbiter, a human ship has arrived and is closing in on the entrance port.
You gotta love how they have this throwaway line hinting at the Arbiter's past, only for it to never be mentioned again.
I do not wish to be impudent, but you have charged me with the destruction of humanity.
A most noble cause for one with such a troubled past.
Kinda summarizes my feelings on the story overall. And we could add depth to this story, but let's just save it all for the books or whatever. Speaking of which, Forge should have had some other sergeant or marine with him scouting the area so the two could talk, you know? Learn more about each other. And the biggest failing of Halo Wars is how the characters interact with each other. It lacks that punch, that epicness that the original trilogy nailed so well. It all just feels like another day at the office, and aside from the dope as fuck action cutscenes, I just don't feel all that invested. You know, because this is a spin-off series set way before the fall of Reach, Pillar of Vadam, and the events of the original games, there needed to be a middle ground struck between new/casual and hardcore fans. You can't have the story revolve around a bunch of unexplained crap because then the newbies won't know what's going on. But you also can't spell out every tiny detail because then the hardcore fans already know that shit. So what we have is a Halo campaign that feels instantly familiar and plays it safe in every way. Plays it too safe. The Prophet of Regret even makes an appearance. That was a nice bit of fan service. He also had Robin Atkin Downes, the original voice actor, make a return. So that kicks ass. But, oh god, the years were not kind to him at all. Guess he decided to take up smoking, huh? Despite having a seemingly well-rounded cast of heroes and villains.
More of an ensemble cast. It's kind of an ensemble cast.
None of the characters are provocative or especially relatable. They're all pretty much stereotyped versions of archetypes we've seen in Halo before. Sassy blue AI sidekick, strong and silent soldiers, old grizzled war veteran, captain of a huge ship, badass cocky marine dude, hardcore alien in cool armor, scrawny asshole in a floaty chair. The only thing that's new is Anders, a nerdy but cute scientist girl. I feel like it's a common pitfall of RTS games for the writers to devote so much of the dialogue to strategic talk.
We've got Grizzlies inbound from Spirit of Fire. Break through that line for our Pelicans. Final evac from planet surface inbound. Use Cyclopses to repair the power core.
Then it's kind of like the focus was in the wrong place, you know? We should have been getting to know these characters, their personal goals, motivations, weaknesses, strengths. I think the best way to illustrate the mediocre writing of this game is to take Captain Cookie Cutter and compare him to Captain Keyes. Both of these characters function in a similar role, but why is Captain Keyes so much more interesting and cool, you ask? Oh, I'll show you why.
Why aren't you in the med bay, Sergeant? Any sign of other Covenant activity? Any idea what it is we've got down there? What made you choose my observation deck as your lab, Professor?
Marines, let's move.
Yes, sir.
Okay, sir. Chief, you have the point. Real pretty. Friend of yours?
No, we just met.
Captain, hunters!
Hang on.
Nice one, sir.
Time for a little payback. I want everyone at their stations.
Everyone, sir?
Everyone. And Cortana. Let's give our old friends a warm welcome.
I've already begun.
Prep for pod launches, bring weapon systems online.
Expecting trouble, Captain?
Harvest may be ours again, but I don't think the Covenant appreciate that yet.
It comes down to the writing, the direction, and delivery. It's about the journey of the characters, where they started and ended up. Getting back to the plot, inside the temple the Covenant find other human settlements. Regret wants Arbiter to blow the place up to destroy the evidence. Meanwhile, Cutter and crew mount an attack on the interior. After clearing out the Covenant forces, Anders touches a thing and discovers a bunch of little glowy things. Yo, Anders, are you bored with the plot too? Cause I think we should like make out and shit.
Remove this filth!
Oh shit! Ambush!
Take cover!
Yeah, get some, you alien filth! We rescue Forge and reconvene on the Spirit of Fire. So after literally 30 seconds of observing glowing dots in a giant room, Anders somehow finds out about a planet called Arcadia.
All it did was point here.
Yes, all it did was point at a second star system.
Based on nothing more than the hunch of a scientist with apparently no military experience, Cutter is easily convinced to pull his Phoenix-class colony ship away from Harvest. Does that sound dumb to anyone else? Didn't you guys spend 5 years trying to retake Harvest and now you're just gonna abandon it? I mean, it sounded dumb to Cutter.
Our orders are to investigate Harvest. We still don't know a lot about what's going on down there.
Now, even if the Spirit of Fire knew the Covenant were going to Arcadia, the writers simply didn't do a good enough job of clarifying what Anders found in the temple and why it convinces her that the Covenant are heading to Arcadia.
Very well, Professor. I'll clear it with Admiral Cole.
Hey, is he talking about, like, Cole Protocol?
I'm initiating Cole Protocol Article 2. We're abandoning the Ottoman.
Isn't it funny how they put in those little Easter egg type details, but couldn't manage the more basic fundamentals? They arrive at Arcadia, where other UNSC ships are engaging the Covenant, one of them familiar, and they get a transmission pleading for help. Now it's time to see what's going on down there. Oh god, it's awful. It's horrible. Sweet mother of mercy. Alright, now we're going down on the planet. They got Spartans down there. Forge links up with the Spartans, they rescue the civilians, escape the city, there's a giant bubble shield that appears, the UNSC pierces through it, some other stuff happens, blah blah blah, construct giant fleet, great journey. Anders gets captured and the team follows her signal to uh-oh. The Flood weren't really treated right in this game at all. Fast forward through a bunch of crap and Cutter and the gang concoct a scheme to destroy the Star Forge, the dormant Forerunner fleet, and the hollow planet itself.
The overloaded FTL reactor will cause a chain reaction in the sun.
Enough to destroy all the ships here before the Covenant can get a chance to make anything from them.
It's not a very original plan, but we know it'll work.
But not before an intense badass showdown between Forge and Arbiter. It's a fight unlike any we've ever seen. The choreography is fantastic. Red Team engages a bunch of honor guards and is beating the shit out of them. And well, that was a pretty lame way to die. With the reactor being damaged, the detonation sequence must be activated manually, but Forge knows they all make it sooner or later. Forge volunteers and sends Red Team back to the Spirit of Fire. After finagling their way around the planet, Cutters, Anders, and Red Team escape with their lives and go into cryosleep. Let me put it this way, I like the ideas that Halo Wars has, just not so much their execution. And it was fun exploring these unique planets and settings that we'd never seen before in the Halo universe. But overall, as a hardcore Halo and RTS fan, the story may have dazzling cutscenes and fun moments, but it lacks the depth I was hoping it would have. When it comes to the mission design in the campaign, it's pretty great. The variety of levels is appetizing. In one, you might need to rescue some teammates before a certain amount of time expires. In another level, you could burn Flood off the exterior of a ship. Each objective is unique, and requires you to switch your tactics up if you want to succeed. Traversing the map, revealing the fog of war, and uncovering what lies beyond is thrilling. The later missions gradually open up the sandbox and give you more upgrades, units, buildings, and special abilities. It all looks pretty good in the beginning. You're having a fun time, and then Mission 4 comes around, and difficulty spike central hits you like a fucking flipped elephant.
The transport ships have been destroyed. We need to restart.
Fuck you, Cutter! Out of the legendary Halo campaigns, Arcadia City is the hardest mission I've ever played. On Heroic, it's hard, barely manageable, but Legendary, you have to be perfect. The game will eat you alive. Difficulty should ideally feel progressive, like the challenge is getting harder and harder the further in you get. But Halo Wars suffers from that artificial difficulty spike. The mission after Arcadia Outskirts is a cakewalk compared to the city, but then Doma Lipe shows up, and again you get fucked in the ass. Look at this, I literally couldn't push out of my base for 25 minutes or so. I was just doing the same thing, fucking stuck building troops and turrets only for them to be destroyed, barely have enough resources to get new ones. God! And then there's a part where you have two back-to-back missions where the setting doesn't change at all. It's like, kind of lazy and filler. And up to this point in time, the only way to heal your units is by using a special ability that costs resources. But then you get the Cyclops unit, and you're like, oh fuck yes, now I have a unit that can repair things. But nope, this is the only mission you get them in. Again, I'm kind of complaining a lot, but it's only because I'm a stickler for RTS games and a stickler for Halo. So I'm doubly critical. And don't get me wrong, Halo Wars is a blast, hella fun, despite any and all issues I have with the mission design. So the challenge on Heroic is fairly well tuned, Legendary is akin to Halo 2, so if you hate yourself, play that. Each level has some kind of unique gimmick. Arcadia Outskirts starts with a hectic retreat, followed by bunkering down and defending before pushing forward to retake ground. In the 7th mission, you're walled in, and have a limited amount of time before a Scarab's death beam homes in on you. By destroying these generators, you can make the Scarab track you slower, and it becomes easier to assault the mech. A lot of creativity went into crafting these missions, and from a design standpoint, I can respect that. But if you just want to chill out and watch things explode, Halo Wars is pretty great for that too. Now, it always disappointed me how you didn't get to play as the Covenant or the Flood in the campaign. The Flood are an interesting faction. They fight everyone just like they do in the games, use horde tactics, they can take over your infantry, and their buildings regenerate over time. They likely didn't have nearly enough time to flesh out the Flood to be a full-fledged faction. Regardless, Ensemble was able to integrate the Forerunners, Flood, Covenant, and humans into this game in a way that feels natural. The Sentinels fly around the maps, patrolling and cleansing the Flood, while the Flood are set up in various locations to inconvenience everyone else. You get all these huge battles between multiple factions, and it's reminiscent of Combat Evolved. What I really love is how they made the skulls more accessible. You get one challenge per mission, complete it, go to the place located on your map, and collect your prize. Simple, easy, fun. The black boxes function as the old skulls used to, in hidden locations throughout the level. These unlock achievements and little bits of story you can find in the timeline section of the game, which details all the important events that occurred up to this point and beyond.
When we started Halo Wars, I think it took us a while to get into the mindset of less is more.
The simple controls and simple gameplay is actually just what people want and what's more fun anyway, so we always pull back towards that.
Overall, Halo Wars simplifies the mechanics we see in most RTS games because it would have been a disaster if there was tons of micromanagement involved. It's easy to select units, but controlling and setting groups of units wasn't introduced until the sequel. Control is always such an underappreciated part of game design, and that's what Halo Wars really excels at. You get to control Spartans, groups of Marines, Banshees, Scorpions. You can control everything from a lowly group of grunts to the mighty Scarab. This game lets you take the reins and command everything, even vehicles and units we had never seen in Halo before. They did have unique elements with the way you could control the camera. Spinning it around, rotating, zooming in and out. It gave you a great view of the battlefield, and let you change it on a dime to accommodate your needs. With its simplistic yet slightly flawed control scheme, Ensemble proved it was possible to make an RTS work with a controller and two hands. They were able to overcome the obstacles most people thought they'd get stuck on. What the story of Halo Wars might lack, it more than makes up for in gameplay if you're willing to tackle an occasionally unfair challenge.
The transport ships have been destroyed.
On the real, Halo Wars blows the sequel out of the water when it comes to map design. In 2, the maps have like generators guarded by 3 sentinels, infantry garrisons, that's about it. But in the OG, we had all sorts of garrisons, sniper towers, bunkers, destroyed warthogs. There were bonus supply pads or reactors spread throughout that you could capture, vision points. Certain towers controlled shield doors, opening and closing flanking routes. These little gimmicks add an important layer of depth to the game and reward players for positioning and map knowledge. I mean, these locations just feel way more alive. Interesting, they feel like real places in the Halo universe. For example, on one area you might be able to unleash some Flood AI enemies to attack your opponents, and in another map you could hire Sentinel mercenaries that you can attach onto your units. It keeps a strategy game fresh when your strategy changes depending on where you play. This is where you can finally play as the Covenant, which play vastly different than the humans. They get overpowered heroes that you can upgrade, that have special abilities. Their units are weaker overall, but cheaper, and the Covenant have a bigger population. Guess you could say they reproduce a little too much.
Ew!
Truly, I appreciate the way they made both factions play differently through their mechanics as well as their strategies. In addition, every single unit can be upgraded, which gives each vehicle, aircraft, and infantry some way to compete against the others. Although in real multiplayer matches it typically devolves into players massing and upgrading one type of unit, which gets real boring. Of course, you got that rock, paper, scissors design principle where each type of unit is countered by another, and then you have units that specialize in certain roles. I love the Locusts and the way they demolish buildings, or the Spartans who can hijack any vehicle and instantly power it up. And then you got fucking Arbiter with dual energy swords who can jump to the goddamn moon and back. There's a lot of sandbox tools to play around with, plenty of maps to wage war across, and enough game modes to keep players satisfied. Even if you're not an expert pro, it's entertaining as hell to just watch your units fight each other. Though it doesn't offer the same depth as other RTS games, Halo Wars multiplayer can still stand on its own 2 feet, and makes for an entertaining foray into a different side of the Halo universe. When it comes to Halo Wars 1, I think it's one of the more flawed experiences in this franchise. And how could it not be with such a rough, disaster-ridden development? Not to mention Bungie's near-complete lack of involvement, which really left Ensemble Studios hanging out to dry. like a used tampon. Story-wise, it's about as average as it gets. Humans gotta stop the Covenant from doing the thing. Hooray, we did it. What now? We put the series in cryo-freeze and wait 8 years for the sequel. Cool. Aside from some spectacular and very timeless cutscenes, Halo Wars didn't do much to add on to the overarching story either. Sure, we got to see Spartans in greater numbers, which was fucking cool, not gonna lie, and more or less made it easier to segue into Reach. But at the end of the day, it all feels inconsequential.
And for the record, I would have kicked your ass the first time if the lady hadn't stopped me.
And that's not the worst thing in the world. Better to have a mediocre story than one that fucks everything up. On the multiplayer and gameplay side of things, it is rough for an RTS. The maps are fantastic, dynamic, yet the amount of content and versatility left a lot to be desired. The low population count was especially disappointing for a strategy game, though that was probably due to the hardware of the Xbox 360. The control scheme Ensemble came up with is as good a setup as I could possibly imagine. And with Marty O'Donnell helping Ensemble to make the soundtrack as Halo-y as possible, and with the team's undying resolve, Halo Wars still feels and sounds like Halo. And it's the most important thing Ensemble needed to do with this game. What it boils down to is Halo Wars is a welcome addition to the series that served as a way to explore new frontiers and genres. It got a sequel and some more DLC, which will hopefully pan out well in the future. It brought a change of perspective and served as an introduction to the RTS genre for many console gamers. Though many elements could have been improved, it's a wonder the game turned out this way at all. And that is why Halo Wars 1 was so awesome and bad.